Welcome back, guys, to the Improvement Season podcast. It is me, Pascal Floor, and on the other end, it is Steve Hall. This time, we are going to record it a little bit like a two-part series, but you won't even notice that anyway. But it's just because I will be on holiday next week, and we thought that this might be the perfect opportunity then to finally cover the questions. So this time, we're going to split it up like this. This week, we're talking a little bit about the update, especially probably around Steve and his contest prep. And then next week, we are going to cover solely questions, all right? Because we promised that since a very long time. So without further ado, Steve, how are things going on your end?
Yeah, so this week, I'm back into dieting, back into training. So yeah, I guess I'm 2.5 days in. It's Wednesday, isn't it? So yeah, it's going smooth transition. I know that's always actually, I guess, it's something I've never really struggled with diet breaks and like then getting back into the diet. Just don't know why. It's just not something that I've struggled with, but I know people do struggle with that, and that's just that individuality of things. So last week, to kind of talk about that, I did take the full week at maintenance. So I think I ate between 3,300 to 3,400 calories, which is not bad for a maintenance.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I didn't change anything. My steps were pretty much static. Kept the weighted vest on as I normally did. Trained once to kind of a deloading session. So I didn't do my 2 sessions, but I just went for a walk with Ada for a little bit more to get my steps to where they normally are. And yeah, I guess in terms of, actually, I know you're planning a presentation on kind of how to approach diet breaks, but as we were going through, there was kind of, it's one of those things where in practice, there's something on paper. You talk to someone like, have a diet break, eat to maintenance and have this many more carbs or calories. But then in practice, doing it, you learn some things. So I was kind of like, man, my carbs were at 300 grams anyway, and they're coming up to close to 500. Am I just going to double like my carbohydrate sources, like my oats, my potatoes, everything? It was like, oh, this volume's getting high. Yeah. You've talked about it before, and I think it's something people don't really think about is stretching the stomach. And so it's great to stretch it because you get that fullness, but then when you come back to diet, you're no longer getting that. So you had a really cool suggestion in terms of like trying to standardize volume. So if you're having like your potatoes and I don't know, some veggies and a protein, when you go into your diet break, maybe you rotate out some of those veggies and you rotate in something a bit more calorie dense, but not something super like palatable, depending on the person. So I took it on myself where I increased some things like my oats. I just like had a bit more, but I didn't kind of make it much higher in volume. So I just used like less water, things like this. And then with some of my other meals, I was just adding in like, I don't know, maybe I had a bowl of Cocoa Pops with my potatoes, for example, just to kind of keep carbs up, but keep volume down. But yeah, by the end of the week, I was kind of in a position where nutritionally, at least, I was like, Matt, I know it sounds, I kind of feel guilty for it because you feel like you should be struggling when you're like 7 weeks out or something. But when you think and consider, it just seems ridiculous to say this. I've only been dieting like 10 weeks, like a little over 10 weeks at this point. So diet fatigue isn't going to be crazy. It isn't crazy. And so, I almost feel guilty for saying it because, and you'll have some really good thoughts surrounding this topic in terms of like you're in prep. Everything should be hardcore, blinkers on, 100% bodybuilding. Nothing else in your life matters. I'm not sure that's the best approach for everyone, and I don't think it's a necessary approach for a lot of people at all. Maybe some people it is necessary for them, and maybe for some extreme goals it is necessary. I'm not going to argue against that, but for me, I was just like, you know what? It would be really nice for me and Charlotte to just like one night have a takeaway, chill out. So we did that, and then on the Saturday even, we went out for dinner at a restaurant. These were tracked meals. I estimated them, put them into my macros, fit them in. And it's not leading to me binging. It's not leading me to massively overeating. It's not throwing off the plan, but it's allowing it to be a little bit, it's still not normal. Like it's not balance, like an off-season balance where I wouldn't even think about it. Like multiple meals out during the week, I don't think is a huge deal. But yeah, during that, that's a little bit of balance in my diet break. And I don't know if I'll get any more of that sort of kind of opportunity because things are going to get harder and I'm not going to want to kind of have that kind of meal out or that kind of maybe inaccuracy of a takeaway or something. But at this stage where I'm on track, feeling good, it's kind of nice to have a little bit of normality. And that week was kind of like, I kind of just feel pretty normal this week. So that was nice. But yeah, sorry, I kind of blabbed on. I don't know if you have anything you want to pick apart or question.
I don't even know, to be very honest. I mean, there were so many things that you mentioned and talked about where I'm just like nodding my head and also think we can go further down that lane and talk about it. So, for example, when it comes to that hardcore bodybuilding mentality of like, this is prep, this is only me, I can see where people are coming from. I also know that some people just need that to stay focused and stay committed to the task. But I also do believe that too many people burn themselves out with this approach, where it's like they are committing everything to it when in reality it's not necessary. Because in it for itself, when you really boil it down and think about it, and I know that may ruffle some feathers because so many people identify themselves with being the bodybuilder who's committing a lot of time to it. It is just lifting weights and moving weight from A to B and losing body fat. That's what it is. I know if you really break it down like this, it sounds very unsexy, unappealing, and also super easy. And I know it's not easy, especially getting to those lean levels. But if you really put it into perspective like this, then you take the seriousness out of it, which doesn't mean that I don't want people to take the prep seriously, because of course you want some commitment, you want some focus. But the pressure of the seriousness is coming or being pulled out of it. You're doing it solely because you enjoy it. And that's how it's supposed to be. This is always what we are talking about. And I know, especially for first-time competitors or maybe even second-time competitors, I sometimes have the feeling that they are treating things way too seriously, when in reality, the only one who's putting pressure on them is themselves. And is that really what is necessary? No. Fuck no. Right? No one is judging you for that. And if you take things way more laxed, I think that you have a much, much better time. And by that, maybe you will get there much better on time as well, get there in a much better conditioning while still enjoying things in life. And what really bugs me, to be honest, is when people have that black and white thinking of like, I need to be that bodybuilder and everything else needs to suffer because of that. No, you are the one in control. You are the one who decided to do that. While you are aware of that or not, it is you after all, because you're making the decisions in that regard. And owning then your decisions is very important. You don't have anyone else to blame. If you have, due to that, issues in your relationship, no one else to blame but you in that regard. Right? And I think that you went through those extremes in the past, and now you have a completely different approach to it. And which one is much less stressful? The one now. And probably this is also going to be the one that is most successful at the same time.
Yeah, I know. In previous, like I would just have these arbitrary rules in mind where I'm like, okay, contest prep it is. Now I have to track everything to the gram. Like every little thing that I'm consuming, and I wouldn't even think about the logic behind it. And I might have like really strict macro targets, and I can't go like higher in fat one day and like lower in carbs if I need some flexibility. And obviously, as you get to stage, the flexibility really reduces. But this would be like miles out, and I'd just be like, no, I'm in prep mode. Strict it is. It can't have this flexibility. And like you said, that's not super sustainable. It kind of reminds me of, I was just watching Andrew Chappelle's story. He's going to be coming on the podcast to talk about kind of being too lean or can you be too ready too soon? And we're going to be having a roundtable with him and Alberto, which I think is going to be super fruitful discussion. But he said in his research, a lot of competitors drop out early. Like the survivorship of bodybuilders is like abysmally low, probably better than PTs. But it's a similar thing where people just get burnt out.
And by the way,
and they
Steve,
have like poor expectations or programming or whatever.
So keep your thoughts of what it is that you wanted to continue on. Just wanted to chime in that it makes me look like a bad coach, but I just want to put it out there to be absolutely transparent with our listeners, because I think that there's a false perception of reality. I have the vast majority of athletes that came to me for contest prep have not made it to stage. Let that sink for a moment, and I want the listeners to really be aware of that. And of course, I'm putting myself on a bad light right now, because I could pat myself on the shoulder and be like, no, everyone who is with me makes it to stage. But that's not what reality looks like. So many people are ignorant to what contest prep really looks like. They start a prep, and once things are getting hard, even at the first hurdle, they are stumbling and they are falling to the ground and they don't get up again. Some people then get up, stumble again, fall back onto the floor or to the ground, and never get up after the second time, right? There are not many people who make it to stage, unfortunately. And you can twist and turn it whatever you like, right? You will, of course, as a coach, always try to be the problem solver, but sometimes you're trying to solve all of the problems, but it's just too overwhelming for the individual and they give up, unfortunately. And it's like I said, and you had kind of that term, but it's survivorship bias. When we take a look at Instagram, we only see the people who made it. We, of course, never hear of those people who never made it. And I can promise you that for every kind of show there is out there, there are probably a dozen, if not maybe up to 100 people who don't make it, even though that they said that they are going to prep.
And I wonder how many of those are because they're kind of trying to make the journey unnecessarily difficult on themselves, because you can only understand if someone's making it unnecessarily difficult because they have just certain preconceptions of what a bodybuilder and lifestyle must be like, where they have to eat like these really strict ways or what have you. And there's just kind of like just that thought is even scary and off-putting. And if they don't communicate that to you as a coach, and I imagine this has happened to you, Pascal, it's definitely happened to me with clients who wanted to go to stage and then they pull out. I'm kind of like, why? Like, it wasn't clear to me what was kind of up on your end. You could have described the situation, be really open, honest about stuff, and we can find solutions towards getting you to stage. And they're the clients that make it with us, is because, like you said, we're problem solvers. But if we don't know what the problem is, and clients can sometimes create their own problems, you can't solve it, because, yeah, if you just have preconceived kind of ideas about, oh, okay, so I've got, I don't know, close to a 6-month prep, and those 6 months has to be like this most rigid lifestyle where I can't eat out, I can't socialize, I can't do so much. Of course, you're going to quit because you're just going to be like, that's too far.
And that doesn't even take into consideration the things that are outside of your control. Because I also have people dropping out of the contest prep due to very severe personal issues that, like, I don't know, a death in the family, maybe something like that already happened. And these are things that are not in your control, or where you are kind of fading, but things outside of your control. And there are plenty of other things I can think of that make someone stop the contest prep without them wanting to. Like, I can think of things such as generalization of injuries, like severe injuries. You're breaking up with your girlfriend, or maybe even more severe, like your marriage. You need to move houses, and that is a financial burden, and that needs to happen in the next couple of weeks. You're losing your job, whatever, right? Like very, very intense moments in your life that are already stressful in it for itself. And then on top of it all, it's coming in the midst of a prep, when your priorities and also the focus need to really be at prep mode. That can just like put a spanner in the entire thing. And for some, or for the vast majority of people, that is just the end of a prep. Right. And I just, and this is of course like where experience comes into play, that makes me calm down and makes things, it puts things in perspective for me also when it comes to like hitting the macros, what you can allow yourself to do. And this is just purely experience for me personally that makes me so calm with so many things, where I'm just saying like, who gives a fuck? Come on, just do it, right? And then you start to learn what is really important and what isn't. But that's, of course, very, very hard if you are not working in that field, such as we do, and you're basically confronted with these things ever since like 4.5 years of doing it as an online PT, and then before that already, and then applying certain things yourself and going through them yourself. If you don't do that, and you have a completely different job, and this is just the first time that you're doing it, it's of course very, very hard to prioritize and figure out what it is that you need to prioritize in the first place and the importance of things. And this is also where then people are starting to stress out about the prep, where we, on the other end, at least that's the case for me, I'm sitting on the other side, and I'm sometimes then like, you don't have to freak out about it. You're just freaking out because you're right now very, very an emotional being, which is absolutely understandable. But sit down, calm down, breathe, and really think about what it is that you're stressing about at the moment. And you will probably realize that it's just like actually very laughable if you really put it into perspective with other things. I think everyone is then always talking about dieting and contest prep. It's a privilege. Right? That we are privileged of being able to go there. And I don't really think that the vast majority of people have really given it a thought what that really means. They are just parroting the phrase that people are then saying somewhere over on social media. So like, it is a privilege that I'm cutting my calories. But do you really understand what that means? Because if you do, you would act upon it. And not many people do. Right. And it's also not easy. I'm not saying that it's easy, because it isn't. But always keep that in the back of your head when it comes to these kind of things, because we are really privileged.
Fast, efficient fat loss. Does that sound like music to your ears? The mini cut movement might just be for you. Mini cuts are like robbing the fat bank. You want to get in and out with as much fat as possible. In a short period of time, you could easily look to lose 6 to 12 pounds of fat. The mini cut movement is excellent. There's group support for extra accountability and also expert help within the group. We have educational videos to keep you on track along the way, and you get all your nutrition and training customized and individualized for you. So if that sounds of interest, get involved with the mini cut movement. Yeah, I think it's the situation there that you've described happens. There's certain clients that are worse for it than others. And sometimes I absolutely understand where they're coming from, because I definitely used to be this way. And I imagine you have these clients as well, Pascal, and if they're listening, they know who they are, and I always treat them with respect, but I also make them understand that, like, sometimes they ask questions where I'm just in my head like, really doesn't fucking matter. Or like it makes a blind bit of difference. Like if they're like, oh, I don't know, I missed off this set here, shall I make up for it over here? And I'm like, I mean, either way, it's not a big deal. Or like, I don't know, I've got this thing on the weekend. Should I take a refeed day? Or like, should I cut my calories back? And like, they're little things which ultimately aren't going to make a big difference. And I'm happy to be there to kind of comfort them and let them through that. And I'm struggling to think of the really minutiae things that for some reason, the examples I'm giving aren't the most even minute ones, but there's like real minutiae. But when you're on prep, everything just heightens itself. You're just a very, very sensitive being, and you have mood swings. And so you can easily get into that period of time where you're just like questioning everything. And I think it's worse with social media, because you can see someone, I don't know, being that super hardcore person, or you can see someone else who's like super shredded really early, and you can just be like, or you can see someone who's like not shredded, and you're like, but I'm really lean. Why am I lean and they're not lean? And am I ready too early? And you're just like, that's why I coach, like having us in your corner or another good coach in your corner is so helpful. But I can, like, people just get super neurotic during contest prep. And I think that ultimately, actually, the point I would like to make here, it's like everything. I think because if you care about your results, which we all do, and me and Pascal have talked about this previously about our training, like sometimes we question ourselves, should I be training this way, or should I really be like, I don't know, training like so-and-so, or doing this with my training? And you get a bit irrational. And I have this during deload weeks, especially because I have more time and I think about things too much. And I think what it boils down to is like, be rational, assess what you're doing, and then be confident in your methods and your process. So that's really helped me so much in my later like lifting years to just be consistent with what I'm doing. It's helped me in this contest prep, be confident in what I'm doing, because when I rationalize it, when I sit back and just like ask myself the really obvious questions of what would be the problem of doing this, or why would I do that? What's the consequence of so-and-so? Often it just like answers the question for me, and I can calm myself so much more. And at the end of the day, we're not like doing, I don't know, like heart surgery. We're doing fucking bodybuilding, we're losing fat, gaining muscle. Like, it's not that scary. If you can't really do anything that warrants like an immediate 1 minute response from your coach or something. But people do get that hyper kind of sensitive, especially in a contest prep. And I think it's just great for a coach to be there, to be giving their athlete confidence and building them up to feel like, no, we've got this under control. That's kind of, I think, super valuable for a lot of competitors going to stage.
No, absolutely. And the things that we're talking about are, of course, things that we're observing a lot of times. And when someone is listening, I really do hope that some people are actually getting some kind of takeaways from the things where it's just like, oh, I can resonate with that. That is actually me that they are talking about. And instead of being like, oh, those fuckheads, they don't know what they're talking about, it's like, oh, maybe there is something, right? Because we are not sitting here to judge anyone. It's just our observations and the experience. And I would be very certain in 2 years from now, we may even look back at the things that we are saying right now and think like, maybe I didn't really consider X, Y, Z. And this is something that has now evolved over the past 2 years, where I'm now having a different stance on things. And I also know that everyone is, of course, reacting differently to a prep. And it's always also dependent on where they are at in their life. I mean, I'm not always the happiest individual, and that is independent of prep. And just imagine when you're then going through a hard phase in your life and you are in the midst of prep, how confusing that can be as well when you don't really know what to do. Of should I continue the prep? And you're just like, I don't know, drawn between some kind of extreme approaches, and you can't really come up with a clear conclusion. And I was there in the past a couple of times where I then reached out to you and said like, Steve, I don't know what to do. Shall I, even like last year when COVID happened, I even then consulted with Jared just to ask him like, from a purely objective perspective, because Steve and I, we are very close. What would you say? What should I do here, right? Something like that. Just because I was so uncertain about it. But in what I would like to send across to the audience and everyone who's listening is just relax. Like, honestly, and this is, I think, a common message that we're always trying to promote here on the podcast is relax. It's bodybuilding. I know we would all love bodybuilding to be that hardcore thing that we are proud of, but in reality, it's like you said, man, it's just lifting and it's just starting. It's not a heart surgery or so. And by the end of my life, I'm probably not looking back and be like, I was that bodybuilder, man. That was fucking cool. Eh? No, I want to be proud of perhaps the father I was, the legacy I can leave behind for my kids. Perhaps even at some point, I don't know, have something there that can change the lives of others. And I don't think that me lifting some weights and getting shredded will do anything for other people necessarily, right? And there was one thing that you also then mentioned, and that is the journey. I'm very much under the opinion that journey is the thing that makes people happy. It's never really the end goal, or hardly ever is. Maybe in few, there are always exceptions to the rule, right? But for the vast majority of things that you're doing in life, the journey is what actually gives you happiness, because it makes you feel like that you're serving a specific purpose. It keeps you focused at a specific task that you're enjoying to do on a continuous basis. And so many people always have those end goals in mind of like, okay, when X happens, I will be happy and I will be a better human being now. And once they're getting to that point and they had such high expectations for what is then about to happen, they are always getting crushed because nothing really changes in their life. But on the path in getting there, they were probably happy because the journey in for itself was very fulfilling and rewarding. Right? And that is kind of applying to everything in life, in my opinion, where you should just enjoy the moment, enjoy the process. And that can also mean that at times there will be hard times in it, but once you overcome it, it feels good. It feels good to achieve something. But once you are getting to a destination, it's like the what is, again, with a carrot in front of the car in front of the horse, and with a carrot and all that kind of stuff, right? So you hold a carrot stick in front. That it will never reach the carrot, but that is all right. And that should be you, that one goal leads to the next, or it kind of transforms. It's like Dragon Ball nowadays. There's never an end. There's always a next level that they actually can transform to. At first, it was just the ultimate thing of becoming a Super Saiyan, and now it's just like Ultra Instinct or whatever, right? It's kind of the same thing here. You should always, or your goals should evolve with you over time, because that, I think, leads to more happiness than reaching a specific goal. And once again, I think that too many people are just too fixated on the outcome. Once they are getting there, maybe in a miserable way, but they suffered for it because they hope that it's actually having then a good impact on them, then they are crushed by the end of it. And then all of a sudden it's like, that wasn't what I expected. And now I suffered in actually getting there, and it wasn't worth it.
Yeah, I think there's a few points there. Something I really want to touch on is, one, the suffering. I think there is a certain element of suffering that has to kind of go on during a contest prep, but kind of trying to not view it as suffering and more of a choice to go through that, and a privilege, is a good mindset to have. And as coaches, we kind of try and protect our clients as much as possible from that, to make it endure prep as best as possible, to make it as hard as necessary and no harder than it needs to be. And one of the things I think that's really helped me transform how smoothly things are going this time round is I think I said this to you in a voice message, it feels much more like a lifestyle versus, am I there yet? Am I there yet? I'm chasing that carrot. Rather, I'm enjoying just jogging along and doing the processes I need to do each and every day. And I'm like, hell, like at this point, I'm still actually, if I have to be honest, I'm preferring now versus like peak mass and force feeding myself. I'm still preferring it. And I am enjoying that process, and I want to keep enjoying it for as long as possible, as much as possible. And I think kind of just ticking the boxes each and every day, focusing on what I need to do, enjoying the training, enjoying kind of making sure I'm getting my nutrition in on time, taking care of my sleep, making sure to continue to work and be productive at work, and kind of take care of relationships, and kind of trying as best as I can function as a human being as normal. Yeah. That's making it much more like a lifestyle versus something that is like, man, now I'm Steve the bodybuilder and everything else has to go to the wayside.
I think that was very, very well put, and very important for the listeners to hear, and also for myself, of course, as well. Steve and I have a couple of questions then for you, right? I think that many people are struggling with the entire kind of prep thing, mentally speaking, because all of a sudden it becomes that all-encompassing thing, where it's just taking over their life. They can't think of anything else because they think that they have to now be overly focused. I think it's the same when it comes to what we've talked about the last time, that being ready early is a good thing, but being ready too early is probably not. And the same thing applies here as well. Being focused and concentrated is a great thing, but being overly obsessed with it or focused is probably not. You want to be absolutely focused when it's necessary. It's the same when it comes to learning a specific skill, or reading a book, or learning for an exam, right? You learn when it's time to learn, so that you can suck in as much information as possible. But trying then to span it out over 24 hours is probably not a good idea. It just wears you out and makes you tired overall. And probably little of the time that you've actually then studied stays in your head. The same goes there. So my question for you then, do you see yourself Or is bodybuilding, do you have the feeling that bodybuilding is like the thing that you're only thinking about right now and it's dominating everything right now on a daily business, like each and every single minute, each and every single hour? Do you have the feeling that nothing has room and space in it? And be honest, please.
So it definitely, yeah, I think that's a really nice question and a really good point. For me, it's funny because someone, I think it was your client, Niklas, asked in our forum,
yes.
basically saying like, who are you outside of bodybuilding? And I commented on it yesterday and I was like, to be very honest with you, or outside of fitness, like fitness has been a huge part of my life for my entire adult life. And it was a big part of my life in my teens as well, because I got into it and pretty obsessive with it very early. So if I'm truly honest, it's a huge part of my identity. I think if people think of Steve, like friends, family, they think bodybuilding, they think fitness, they think like coaching, they think like muscles, that sort of stuff. Like that's how they will view me. So for me to stand here and be like, oh yeah, I have capacity for like all this other stuff. I live a very simple life. I wake up, I take my dog for a walk, I do my coaching, I go to the gym, I come back, more coaching, gym, and then evening with Charlotte and just chilling out. That's literally what most of my days look like throughout like the past years even. So for me to try and sit here and say like, oh no, I'm living this glamorous life where I'm like, don't know, drinking cocktails at the bar in the evening and like hanging out with people, it'd be a lie. But my lifestyle now is, I would almost say, virtually the same as during my off season. Like I'm still going to see films with friends, like on the weekends. I'm still like going home and seeing family. I'm just letting my bodybuilding kind of complement that. And the only kind of, I guess you call it sacrifice, or the only kind of thing that's different is me and Charlotte aren't doing our usual kind of takeaways and eating out. And that is something we do enjoy together. But I still have the energy to go out and go for walks and do other things that don't maybe involve higher calories. I still have the energy to go and be with my family and be with my nieces and nephews and interact with them. But I'm not going to eat like the birthday cake that maybe is being given out there. I'm going to just like have a glass of water or something and kind of disassociate the occasions with the food and try and find replacements. Me and Charlotte were going to go to like a video arcade over on the weekend. It was actually pouring with rain, so we didn't. But normally we'd like go and find a nice, like, I don't know, restaurant, and we'd go walk there and that would be the thing. But I was like, oh, we can't go and eat out necessarily, but let's go and just go to this like arcade and like have fun there, and we can do that and then come back and make a meal together. So yeah, my capacity for other things is still there, less. And I'm focused more on bodybuilding because I'm doing my posing, which is another kind of element. And it does keep me focused on the goal in hand, but not so much that I'm being taken away and led astray. But I think I'm getting to the point where I need to start being even more focused. One just thing that kind of showed me that was I was doing this diet break, and it was like a kind of mock peak. I was kind of assessing how I was responding to the amount of carbs each day, kind of taking photos regularly. And then on Monday, I saw there was like a competition that went ahead on the Sunday. And I was like, not that I'm certainly not ready, but I could have gone and competed and just like done it as like off the cuff. And I was like, I'm not even thinking I'm anywhere near stage ready. Like it's just not in my kind of radar because I'm so involved in just going through the motions and just lifestyle, and it's not a big deal. So yeah, I was like, I need to be a bit more focused and be like, maybe there's some shows I can pick up and start doing, and just plan ahead for that, Steve, because I don't want to lose what I have right now, which is just like a real nice flow and smooth kind of just ticking the boxes each day. It's like my off season. I'm just eating a bit less kind of attitude, which I'm enjoying.
Hey, Pascal here. I just quickly wanted to remind you of our online coaching service. At Revive Stronger, we put a huge emphasis on the personal aspect of our coaching. And if you want to take your physique and knowledge to the next level, hit the link in the description below.
The thing is, though, that what I'm thinking is, the way that you describe it is that you have those moments where you are then focusing on what it is that you need to do, and afterwards, you're just moving on, living your life as it normally is. You're not taking those thoughts of bodybuilding with you into the next task. And I think that is super important. And I think that this is also one of the major differences to the last time that you prepped, I would assume, and especially the first time that you prepped. Because that is also a common thing I would assume is happening for the vast majority of first time and second time competitors, that they are just thinking about bodybuilding. They can't get rid of those thoughts around bodybuilding, and that drags them down so much and wears so much on them that then by the end of the season they're just tired, and they just want to stop, and maybe then at that point they are binging or never competing again because they just completely blew themselves out during that prep and there's nothing left anymore. And for me, it's really, and correct me if I'm wrong, it really sounds like, okay, when you need, you just step it up one notch, and you are then really focused on the task that needs to be focused on. And when you're done, you're done. You're basically putting down the pen, and it can just rest there for the next time that you actually need to pick it up to then go ahead again and do the work. And everything beside that, it's kind of going home from work. Hopefully, you're leaving work at the workplace. You go home and then you enjoy the time with your family because that is the time that you have together instead of still continuously thinking of work. I think many people can then also maybe relate to that example a little bit more, because I think everyone knows what it feels like to take work with them home, that you're constantly feeling stressed and a little bit of anxiety or so. And is that kind of correct in my assumption?
Yeah, I would say that's definitely fair. It was only last night probably was the first time where I caught myself thinking ahead and getting anxious, because I've been talking about possibly doing a show, like a little bit of a warm-up soon. And then it was all just running through my head, and I started like getting really nervous about stepping on stage and like planning a peak week and shaving and putting on tan and everything. I was like, fuck, I need to book all of this. I need to plan my peak week, blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, God, chill out. Like, it just take like, so for me to get rid of that kind of anxiety, I just need to decide, right, book in for the show, book in your tan, kind of don't worry about the peaking process yet, because you're not at the stage where that matters to you, and then dump it. It's like many things, and I think you're completely right in that, particularly for first-time competitors, they're constantly thinking about it. Like, if you have a competitor and they're questioning the coach like 20 weeks out, how are we going to peak? You know you have a client on your hand that is like really thinking about everything all the time and super kind of neurotic, and yeah, you just have to kind of calm them. And I love the thought of just like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, if for example, for that show, if I just turned up, shaved, tanned, in my trunks, didn't peak, didn't do anything, just went up there and posed, what's the worst that can happen? I'm going to look okay. I'm not going to maybe look my best. I might place last. What's the worst? Like, what's the worst? Like, really there? It's not that big a deal, kind of coming last. Who really cares? Like, it doesn't mean I'm a terrible person.
Like, sometimes I'm just watching some kind of stuff over on YouTube, right? And I was watching a lot of things from, I think Chris Gore is his name, a filmmaker and also a critic back in the days. And they were asking him about shitty movies. And he had one thing that was very good. He said, like, doing a shitty movie and not planning for it is, of course, an awful thing. But if you are planning and doing a shitty movie, you can only win.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing here as well. If you're planning of having like an okay season, but you still, of course, commit to the task and try your very best, of course, in that sense, right? Then you can only win instead of having the expectations too high as well. It's the same when it comes to like Tinder back in the day. So when I was not together with Katie, I always hated it and never understood it when females actually only put up the most amazing pictures of themselves, because whenever you then met them, they could only lose, right? Because they presented themselves in a light that can't ever be accomplished, right? So the person who then meets them will always be disappointed. However, if you turn it around, you put up the pictures that are not the greatest of you, and someone still wants to meet you, you've already won. Right? It's the same thing there as well.
And I think in bodybuilding, you never know who you're going to step on stage with. And John Jewett said it really nicely because he just competed in the Chicago Pro. I forget where he placed. I think it was third. So sorry if it wasn't third, John. If maybe it was better, maybe it was second. Let's say it was second.
Actually, pretty insane.
Yeah, it was insane. Keon looked ridiculous. He's just like got the insanest proportions.
If you just followed his updates already on Instagram, which to be fair, sometimes it's not a real representation of what they will look like on stage, but the pictures that you sometimes saw of him were just like, holy fuck, eh?
I think a lot of his updates were
game
old
over
as well.
Yeah.
I don't think they were even new updates. They were like from the season
really?
before or something. Yeah. But anyway, he was just like, he can't control the outcome. He can't control who turns up. He can't control where he places. But if he looks better than last time, that's bodybuilding, right?
And that comes from an IFBB pro.
Yeah, exactly. Like to hear him say that and not be all so like caught up in his placing, beautiful. Like that's exactly it. I think sometimes, and I mean, equally, what if John turned up? He won. Amazing. What if no one else turned up? It means fuck all, doesn't it? Like, if no one turns up, like, it's just like, well, what the hell? So you can't control the outcome. So just do your best and see what happens. And so you don't need that. That should remove a lot of anxiety surrounding it. Because again, no one's like setting you up. Like no one's got crazy expectations for most of us. So enjoy it.
Totally. And I think that now 40 minutes into the episode, I think it's very worth to mention that the things that we've talked about, of course, also apply to non-competitors when it comes to normal dieting phases and just the entire journey of lifting and gaining phases as well, right? Don't stress about it. I mean, just enjoy the journey, continue ticking off the boxes, and especially those most fundamental important boxes. And then time will tell whether you're genetically blessed, whether you're getting big, whether you're getting super shredded or so. The only thing that is actually important is then time. Like, honestly. And as long as you're putting in the time will then tell you what's possible for you, right? So, yeah.
Cool. Should we move to how we end in this episode?
We just ended as per usual.
And then
we can just like pause it for a slight second and then jump over to the next one without interrupting the recording.
Cool. So yeah, guys, hopefully that's been, and Pascal's completely right. I think a lot of the time this podcast is incredibly niche and specific to bodybuilding, but everything bodybuilders do in some way apply to just general fat loss and muscle gain. It's just we take it to an absolute extreme, but I think a lot of people will relate to those kind of feelings during just general dieting phases or even like photo shoots or whatever it is, getting ready for a holiday. Like no one cares really how you look on the beach as much as you think they do, things like this. So yeah, try and enjoy that process as much as you can because yeah, like you said, it's all about that journey. If you're not enjoying the journey, you're just not going to last and then you won't ever get to the goal. Whereas if you enjoy the journey, then you actually have an opportunity to get to a goal that is ever going to be moving anyway.
Yeah, and to be fair, I'm now doing this since like 7-8 years or so. And it has taken me that long to get to that point where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
And I would even imagine that in a couple of years from now, I'm even more relaxed. I'm even more knowledgeable. So these things, they don't happen overnight. But having maybe a coach by your side can accelerate that process quite severely, right? So maybe you will get there in just like 2 to 3 years instead of going through all the failures and mistakes that we went through.
For sure. No, absolutely. I agree. And with that, we'll catch you next week for the Q&A. And thank you as always for listening. As ever, subscribe, like the channel, all that good stuff. Maybe you caught the vlog, which is probably live now, that I recorded with Gordon.
Yeah.
Let us know if you enjoyed that.
Yeah.
More of that to come. It's going to be pretty cool. So we appreciate it. Share it around. Make our channel explode. And we can become millionaires.
Hopefully.
Billionaires. Cheers, guys. We'll catch you in the next one.
Cheers.
So I'm Steve Hall, founder of Revive Stronger and a coach of Revive Stronger.
My name is Pascal Flor. I'm the co-owner of Revive Stronger and also a coach, of course.
Revive Stronger has probably been going solidly for 3 years, roughly about 3 years.
Revive Stronger, to me, it is becoming kind of my child, my foster child. It's the gathering and getting together of like-minded people.
We've been expanding the coaching team, which is helping us help more people, but each coach can only help a certain number of people.
Right now, it's all over the place. We have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, but there isn't that community aspect behind that.
And so the next step for us is developing a membership site.
So basically, we want to create a family and a community that is then benefiting from another.
A really cool community for people within our little niche is going to be a website.
They will get early access to our podcast.
You can access us, ask us questions.
The community aspect, we have a forum there. You can ask questions, but also you can log your journey.
There's also going to be courses on there.
Courses, presentations on different topics, discount of past seminar footage. We will log our journey as well. We'll start vlogging.
We're going to have documentaries.
Our entire athletic journey. Furthermore, they get access to an exercise video library.
The exercises that we love for hypertrophy and maximizing hypertrophy, we're going to go through those in depth, telling you how to execute them.
We kept them concise and also mobile friendly so that you can watch them in between your sets.
I'm super excited to grow this community. The amount of value that we're going to be delivering is huge, and I'd love you to be part of it.
You will get so much out of that.
I'll see you inside.